All right, welcome aboard to CMIS 210. We're in a little interesting model for this spring in that the majority of the class is actually online, and I have um, I'd like to say a few, but it's really only one poor student here on campus. But we will make this work in our blended environment. So there will be a subtle change to the Blackboard or slash Canvas. We're going to merge those course shells together. So when you guys have done your introductions and things, you may notice that you see people that you haven't seen before. So I will also probably have to do a little bit of work to make sure that all the grades, whatever things you've done, they're all synced in. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. All right. So I wanted to go over the syllabus really quickly and talk about what I expect out of this class, what I hope we can do. So a couple of things as we look at it here. So if you don't realize this, my legal first name is actually Kenneth. So in my PSC, it shows up as Kenneth Griffin. So Kenneth Bradley. So it's a weird thing. I sometimes get a question about that when they see something on a syllabus or on my PSC, and apparently we can't fix that. In no way can we ever fix that in our system. So my office, even though most of you are online, some of you are, I noticed, are on campus, but taking this online and probably a scheduling issue or something else. So my office, TJ Majors 200, if you don't know where it's at, it's right beside the computer lab. My office hours, I list in here. I'm available a lot more, especially online and doing kind of the virtual office piece. I can do evenings and weird things, kind of working around my family. I will say that the fastest way to get to me is with that email address. My phone number, I don't actually have a physical phone any longer. It does go to a voicemail, and it may send me a voicemail immediately as a WAV file to my email, or, as I've had a couple of them, may wait 2 days to send me that. So just be aware of that. You can also call our office, but typically the email is the best way. The only people that I have issues with ever on the email, or I traditionally have had, is coming out of Gmail and Hotmail and some of these free accounts. Please send it. If you don't hear back from me, you send it off a personal account. Send it off of your campus account, and it should get through. So every once in a while, we decide we're going to block all of the, Hotmail or AOL accounts. But we'll use either Microsoft Teams or Zoom. I'm waiting every day for them to cancel our Zoom account, since now we can use Microsoft Teams for essentially the same thing. So if you are on our campus and you'd like to stop into class, so we're going to do a Tuesday-Thursday schedule, 9:30 to 10:45. Now, because I only have a single on-campus student, we may do some adjustments for that. And so you might also look in my office, or we might be in a small conference room. So just be aware. If you send me an email ahead of time, we'll know what's going on. All right, meeting times, required software. So I am trying this where we are going to provide every piece of software and other items for this class. There is so much out there for Python, which is the model we're going to use, that there really isn't, to me, a good justification for using like the Cengage. Cengage Unlimited does some auto grading and things, but I found them not to work that well, so please bear with us on that as we try some of these things. So what we're trying to do, so you've heard me mention Python. Python is kind of our model we're using. So it's kind of like saying we're going to look at cars, and we're going to look at a Ford Mustang as the model to kind of introduce us to that. So we don't have any other courses really on algorithm development. In other words, how do we come up with a solution? So we're gonna use some of this to look at it. So basic structured programming techniques we're gonna look at, solutions. So what we're really gonna get down to is how do we solve word problems in business? So the train leaves Chicago going east. Similar, but not hopefully that obtuse. So typically we're going to have lecture, reading, combined with extensive hands-on. If you don't try things in here, you are going to be a sad, sad camper. You have to try it. You have to be willing to try things. You're going to be frustrated at times. try. So it's going to take you some time to do these, but I think the reward at the end. This, unfortunately, is not a class that you can just read the material and go, oh, yep, I can create this particular thing. So we are going to try to record a weekly lecture, probably 2 weekly lectures, so over some of the materials. I also find it really handy a lot of times if students have questions, I'll record a video and throw that in there. Due dates. So one of the problems with this is I like to throw out solutions as quick as possible so you can compare what you've done, what your fellow students have done. That said, it makes it very hard to take any kind of late material. So if there's a valid reason, so you get into a car wreck, you've been in a coma for a month, we'll figure out a plan. But if you, oh man, I forgot to turn that in, you're kind of out of luck on that. So I anticipate we're going to make some changes in here. So I will look at this and see how we can change some of those things. All of our weeks will typically end at Sunday. So remember that. Start early, ask questions. I know that everybody can do this. I know it. Sometimes it will be frustrating. Sometimes you'll pop in very easily. So, assessment and grading. So, because we have these different learning outcomes, which is the SLL, Service Learning Outcomes, so we're trying to figure out where some of these go and what they're doing. So midterm project, short quizzes, discussion boards, weekly assignments. So all of those typically come over all of these assignments. We use the typical 90, 80, 70, 60 grade scale. We're not going to do some weird high school model where a 96 is an A plus and a 95 is a B or anything weird. So the one thing that is weird is we are weighting the grades. So what you see in Canvas directly may not be the end result of the grading. As I experiment with Canvas, and hopefully I get more comfortable with, does it weight grades correctly? So in other words, all of your weekly assignments are 40% of your grade, discussion boards 10%, quizzes 10%, and exams. So the exam also includes the midterm project, are 40% of your grade. So they're weighted a little differently, so you'll see that at the end. And I will publish out those grades to you and let you know. So again, typically we're going to have everything available online, so I'm not asking you to sign in at a particular time, but please sign in as early as possible during the weeks. If you don't, you'll end up on Sunday and it's 11 o'clock, you're frustrated, and I'm not always available to help at Sunday at 11 o'clock for an assignment that's due at midnight. All right. Bobcat 360 we use to check up and kind of ensure that everybody's on the right path. We use it for even things about, if we have issues with a student in any way or missing class. It's not a punishment. We're trying to make sure and look at ways we can help you find your success in the student role. So grade appeal policy. So at the end of this class, you do have the right to appeal your grade, but that appeal is based only on a couple of criteria. So because I studied hard doesn't count as an appeal method. If I treated students unequally, so I picked on students who have hair below their shoulder line or something silly, that would be a way to look at it. So first step, if you're ever concerned about grades, is always go to your instructor. At the end of the semester, we'll do course evals. We really do look at them, but quite frankly, I also will ask things during the class about, hey, did this assignment make sense to you? So we can revise things, because unfortunately by the time we get the course evals, we're typically on to the next course already. Disability services, make sure that if you're able to take advantage of those, and that's something, but there are some new frameworks for students requiring testing and other exemptions. So just make sure you realize that. I think our Writing Resource Center, temporarily until they hire some new personnel, is parked, as I understand it, but it will be back up and running. It's trying to find people here in Peru is always kind of an interesting challenge. So tutoring, there are tutors available for most classes. A lot of that is peer tutors, so it does depend on finding students who have some knowledge of the material, typically having had that class previous semesters. Academic integrity. So this is an odd class, and I will tell you that in a lot of cases I'm going to tell you to go find materials from somebody else. But part of that responsibility is you need to give the author credit for a code snippet, or if we're borrowing from someplace, that we give them acknowledgement. We're really building on what other people have done. I don't want us to reinvent the wheel, but we also have the issue of you need to do your own work. So there is kind of a balance. This is one of the few classes I'm going to say, hey, we're going to cut and paste out of this because we're going to try some new things. So please make sure that you do your own work. But notice that we actually go beyond others. So students helping others to circumvent attempts, or if you fail to report, you can actually be subject to our academic integrity policy also. Bottom line, do your own work, don't cheat. How about that? Equal opportunity notice. So what we need to do is make sure that everybody is on the same page. I will not discriminate based on one individual person or an attribute. All right, so when I look at the class itself, the easiest place I like to go is I like to click on the modules, because the modules show us essentially every piece that we're in and what we're doing. So the very first module, so week 1, we're going to include videos from class. So what we have in there currently is last year's class. So keep that in mind. I've left them up until we replace them with materials this week. And obviously this week we're a little behind because we had a snow day, so we may adjust a few things just because of that. So there are a couple of things that I need you to do this week. So the first item I need you to do is there is an assignment for the history of computer programming. There is also this introduction section. So I would appreciate if you could introduce yourself. So I see several of you have already. It doesn't need to be anything formal. It's really just, hey, let's find out a little bit about you. So there are going to be a lot of different discussion boards as we go through here, because it's a great way for us to look at some of these items very, very quickly. So I have tried to put in by weeks. So there's some notes in here. And so, again, most of this material comes from somewhere out there. I've tried to attribute it. In this case, it's public domain, the Google images. There are some links in here, and I have noticed, so code.org and some of these things, anytime we use an external link, here's the problem. I don't control those external links. And if they go away or change, let me know, and I will try to find an appropriate link to replace it with, or their updated link. But unfortunately, again, anything we don't directly control, we have there. So there is a history of computer programming in general. So, and then there is one where we're looking at only at Python. So in other words, what are we doing in this particular class? And so we're going to look at a lot about things about Python. And then we're going to look at this idea of ethics and security. So there is a short quiz, and there is a short history quiz. Most people will do really, really well in those. But what we're trying to do is come up with giving you some ideas about where we're going to start and how we're going to progress. So So the Association for Computing Machinery, kind of an odd name. but it has a great membership role in that they talk a lot about ethical guides and conduct. There are laws, there's thoughts about identity. So make sure you've looked at these and think about, how can I be as protected as I can? Now, we have an entire standalone class about cybersecurity, but even in that, we barely scratched the surface of the idea of computer security. So what I don't have yet, and you'll notice, is we do not have a programming assignment the first week. Who knew? But what I do want to do is introduce you to a couple of things. So what I'd like to introduce you to is, this is kind of the holy grail or the mothership or whatever you'd like to think about it about Python. So python.org. This is where we're going to get our materials in terms of the programs we're going to use, the software we're going to use to create Python and run Python. All of that is here. Everything you could ever know about Python is actually here. But we need to kind of turn down that fire hose so that it becomes a little more useful. So, including one of the really cool things right on their front page is this idea of you can have an interactive script right here. And it actually will print my statement hello. So it's a tool that's in here that we use. So if you notice over here on downloads, so they'll take us to the latest version of Python. So 3.1.2.1, which if you notice any of my videos, I'm probably not anywhere near that yet. I don't think I've updated this computer, weirdly, for a while. I'm still in a 3. version, but it tells you what the major differences are, and none of those should impact us in terms of code. So grab the latest version. If you're in a version 3 of something, so maybe you're not allowed to update your laptop or your computer, as long as you've got a version 3. something, you should be fine. So we can get all of that. We can get it for almost any platform. So if weirdly you're on an AS400 or an iSeries, you can actually get Python. If you want to put it on your iPad, there's actually one for that. If you're on Solaris, there we go. HPUX. So there are lots of different versions. Typically, the most common ones you're going to look at, so here we go for 3.112, is you're going to look for ones that are for Mac, if you're a Mac user, or Windows. And notice there's several different ways, so we're going to go through installing it. I'll do that on a different computer to record that, but it is typically available for about everything or anything. Even if you're using an Android tablet, there's a Python version that we can utilize if you really want to. So my stuff will all be done in the Windows installer, so you are certainly welcome to follow that model. The Mac model looks a little different, but unfortunately I don't have a current Mac to show you guys what that's going to look at. Apparently when your budgets are not in great order, you don't get the new $6,000 Mac that I asked for. Be nice. Not getting it anytime soon. So the school said exactly the same thing my wife said to that. So there isn't a huge amount. You should be able to get this done fairly quickly, and I will try every week to post those videos. Now, here's the one thing I will say about the videos. It does take a little bit of time for me to compile them, upload them. I don't typically do a lot of editing. Simply, we don't have enough time, and in no way will I ever be a videographer or, some great cinematographic artist. That's not my niche. So you get what you get. I will cut out, if I go on a random cursing streak or something, I will try to do that. But that's really our first week. And our first week we deliberately make easy to kind of ease into it. This week it actually works out very well since, again, we were closed Monday and Tuesday. And hopefully everybody is getting warmed up and ready for the next snowfall that's going to start in this afternoon. All right. So because I have my volunteer victim student on campus, I'm going to also utilize them for feedback. So I'm going to say, hey, Draven, do you have any questions right off the hand after we went through this piece real quick? No? I'm going to have to mic you up if you're not going to be brave. And it's kind of handy to have that immediate feedback. Again, if you guys have questions, comments, anything, the quickest way typically, especially if you're off campus, to get a hold of me, send me an email. I try to reply to those as quickly as possible. I will say the first couple of days, having school closed and such, my email volume has been a little nuts. So if somehow you get pushed to the bottom and I don't get replied to you, and you don't hear a response within 24 hours, send another email. Send it off of your campus email to make sure it actually gets there. We'll probably also use some Microsoft Teams in here. So we'll all be in a Microsoft Team group so we can use some chat for that. I find it better than trying to use the chat feature inside of Canvas. All right, so if there's no other questions,